Okay, are we ready? Okay, we're going to get started with the Sicha on Parshas Lecha, and as we'll soon hear, this is so appropriate, so timely, and it basically gives us an understanding of what we're supposed to do, considering the situation that we are in currently. Oh, whichever. Pick any table you like. Parshas Lecha, he Parsha Klovis v'Ikris. Parshas Lecha is a general parsha. In other words, it's applicable in so many different areas in Yiddishkeit. It's not just a very specific aspect of what we need to do, but a very general overall aspect. The Ikris, and it's a very important, crucial piece of the Torah that by learning it, we have a much better understanding and ability to move on with everything that we need to do in Torah. So, we start in this week's Parsha a new era, the era of Avram Avinu. Up until now, Yehudi Arishin, the first Jew, Reishisa, and it begins with B'tzivay Harishin Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avram, and we talk about the first Jew who was Avram Avinu, and we also talk about Tzivay Harishin, the first command that Hashem gives Avram Avinu, which was Vayomer Hashem al Avram. Hashem says to Abraham, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'me'laditecha mi'beis avicha el ha'aretz asher arecha. Hashem gives a command to Abraham. I want you to Lech Lecha, to go me'artzecha, from your land, u'me'laditecha, and from where you were born, u'me'beis avicha, from the household of your parents, el ha'aretz asher arecha. I want you to go. Where to? Doesn't tell him where. It just says El ha'aretz asher arecha. I want you to go to the place that I'm going to show you. After that, the Hemshech Parsha, as the Parsha goes on, the Parsha goes on and discusses Avraham Avinu's travels and arrival in Eretz Yisrael. And also about the promise that Hashem says, I will give Eretz Yisrael to you and to your children. Hashem assures Avraham Avinu, I want you to know, to your children, I will give this land. I will give it to you and to your children ad olam, forever. It's going to be yours. And so too the Parsha tells us about the covenant that was made. About the covenant that Hashem says to Avram, that I have given this land to you and to your children. So that's what's discussed in this week's Parsha. And finally we get to the end of the Parsha. And what's the end of the Parsha about? In the end of the Parsha, there's a discussion about the mitzvah of Milah, circumcision. And the kiyuma, the fulfillment of this mitzvah, as Avraham Avinu did it. It was with this mitzvah that this bond, this covenant was made between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael. Hashem says, this is going to be the bond, the covenant between me and the Jewish people, ad olam, forever. It's going to be a bris, it's going to be a covenant that is going to be made, not just by word of mouth, but with sarchem. It's going to be in your skin, in your flesh. That's what bris is all about. Ad olam. This is going to be forever.
Why Rosh Chodesh is considered to be first mitzvah?
What's that?
Why Rosh Chodesh mitzvah considered to be first mitzvah?
Well, because when Yidden left Mitzrayim, that was the first one that was said to them. But the Torah doesn't begin with that, right? And Rashi at the beginning of the Chumash discusses that. So that's why the Chodesh, because the first mitzvah the Yidden got when they were leaving Mitzrayim was about a Chodesh as Elochem. But again, this was the first mitzvah that Avraham Avinu was told, and it's the mitzvah. And again, there's a whole discussion about that, why it was this mitzvah, and why was Avraham Avinu told about this mitzvah, not about other mitzvahs. Avraham Avinu wasn't told about the mitzvah of Rish Chodesh. He was told about the mitzvah of Bris. And again, Chassidus discusses why this particular mitzvah was the first mitzvah and how it empowered us to be able to do what we need to with fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs. So, so this is basically what the Parsha discusses, what the Rabbi just mentioned. But since these particular things of the Parsha, Lech Lecha me'artzecha, about the Lech Lecha, and Avtachas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Eretz Yisrael, and about the promise that Hashem says that you will have Eretz Yisrael, obviously certainly pertinent in our day and age today. And Mitzvahs Milah, the Mitzvah of Milah, they are the first things that are mentioned in Torah. Avraham Avinu may have done many other things, but these are the first time we are introduced to Avraham Avinu. What are we told? Hashem says to Avraham, Vayemer Hashem el Avraham, Lech Lecha. How old was Avraham Avinu then? 75 years old. So he obviously went through a life. For 75 years, the average life of a person today. And there's no discussion of it. Torah doesn't. There's a story, but that's in Medrash. Chumash doesn't say it, right? So in Chumash, we have this is the first introduction to Avraham Avinu. Torah doesn't tell us about that story, and many other stories in Medrash. So there's a lot about the life of Avraham Avinu that could have been discussed. But Torah says no. As far as you're concerned, we're concerned. We have to follow Torah. What does Torah tell us? I want you to know about the story of Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha. This is what the discussion is about. The Avodah, the service of Avraham Avinu. He was the first Jew. From him comes all the rest of the Jewish people. Moving Mekach, from this we can derive since this is the first thing that's told about the first Jew, so it's obvious then that if we think about what we're told about it, the Lech Lecha and the entire Parsha, so there must be something so important, so crucial in what's told in this week's Parsha that affects all the Jewish people from then up until now and forever. So the Rebbe starts off, this Parsha is a really powerful one. So let's try to understand it. Let's try to make some heads and tails of it. What's this all about? What's so important about this? Maybe the story of the Kifshana should have been the first story. Why? Where Avraham Avinu had Mesiras Nefesh, he was thrown into a fire. No, but that's not what it's about. It's about, that's a nice story. It's brought in the Medrash, it's Torah Shabbat Peh, but it's not part of Chumash because it's not as important as the Lech Lecha concept. Moving Makach Shebehem Bal Lidei Bitui Teichna Makol Shekol HaTorah V'Shel Yadus L'Chal. So it's obvious then that the story of Lech Lecha is what Torah is really all about, and Judaism is really all about. It's all about what this parsha tells us. So let's understand a little bit about it. Yodua, it's known, Sh'am She'im Avraham Avinu Heichelo At Kufa Shel Shnei Alofen Torah. With Avraham Avinu, a new era began, which is Shnei Alofen Torah. It's referred to as the 2,000 years of the giving of the Torah, which means the preparation for Matan Torah, and the continuity of it. That is the Shnei Alofen Torah, those 2,000 years, and it started with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu sort of prepared the world for Matan Torah, then was Matan Torah, and then it was continued. Avram Posach ba'achonos lekras Matan Torah. Avram started the preparation for the giving of the Torah. You say to Mikachechol Mimenu Hischil Hayichot Shel Matan Torah K'li Hamuva B'Kisvi Arizal. And also on a spiritual level, what started everything that Matan Torah needed to accomplish and accomplished started with Avram Avinu on a spiritual level. More than just practically speaking, that was the time when Torah was given, but everything that Matan Torah accomplished, and we all know, generally speaking, the concept, what did Matan Torah accomplish? The connection of spirituality and physicality. It was the combined efforts. In other words, the spiritual has to become more physical, the physical has to become more spiritual. And Hashem says, Vani Amaschel, in order to make that happen, Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem, spirituality comes down into the physical world, and that's the beginning of that new service that Hashem wants of us, to make a combination of the two, spirituality and physicality, not two separate worlds, but make that into one world. Particularly, this era begins from the time that Hashem commands Avram Avinu, Lech, Lecha, mi'atzcha la'aretz asher areko. And Hashem says to Avram Avinu, I want you to leave your land and go el ha'aretz asher areko. Go to where I'm going to show you. Shelachein gam lo yimitu'arim b'teira ela pratim ma'atim bilvad mi'ma'asim shalav Avinu b'terem b'yil Eretz Yisrael. That's why until Avram Avinu arrives in Eretz Yisrael, there's not a whole lot told about Avram Avinu. Very little is told about Avram Avinu. Iker Tior Maisov Maskil, when Torah begins to describe what Avram Avinu did, the most important aspect of what the Torah begins to tell us about Avram Avinu is Lech Lecha mi'artzecha k'vi shabala Eretz Yisrael she'oz haya kvar ben ayin hei shana ki mevuah baruch b'durush chassidus. At that point, Avram Avinu was already 75 years old. He already lived a whole life. And still, what happened before is not so important to us. It's not so relevant. What's relevant is, from then and on, Avram Avinu was told, I want you to go to Eretz Yisrael. Now it's as if this is what the life of Avram Avinu is all about. So what's behind this all? What is this life all about, and why is it so relevant to us? Everything of Torah. Torah is Milashon Hira, comes from the word of, it's a lesson. It's a teaching for us how to deal with our lives, what to do during our life. It's a lesson for us. So it's a lesson. It's an everlasting lesson for Yidden, no matter when they exist. Open up the Chumash and you'll know what you need to do. Whether we're just before Mashiach arrives or way back when, right after Matan Torah. They can open up their Chumash then or now, and anybody that opens up the Chumash whenever has a message and a lesson for them, what I need to do. That's what Torah is all about. It's a lesson. It's not just a story. A lot of stories. But Torah mentions those things that are applicable in terms of us learning what we need to do. So, Mahi Imkain Hahira Lebnei Yisrael. So, that being the case, that Torah is a lesson for us. So, what is this? The lesson that we ought to take from Lech Lecha? Shala'achar Matan Torah. Right now, we exist. We're on page 81. We exist after Matan Torah. A Torah was already given, and still we learn about Lech Lecha, that Avram is told, leave your household and go to Eretz Yisrael. So we talk about Avram Avinu. This was to prepare himself for Matan Torah. But if we want to take a lesson from this, and we want to take a lesson for it today, when we exist already thousands of years after Matan Torah, and still we say, see what Hashem says to Avram back then, and learn what we ought to do today. It almost seems impossible. You want to learn about what we need to do today. We can't take from what Avram Avinu was told before Matan Torah, in preparation for Matan Torah. We need to think about, we already received the Torah, and we've had it for so many years, what we should do today. So why take a lesson from what Avram Avinu was told before Matan Torah?
We even have the Yom Yom today. We do it in the opposite order.
The what?
The Yom Yom today, so we do it in the opposite order.
Right. So the real question is that somebody asked, Why is it? Hayomim tells us it's an opposite order, but the question is, why is it an opposite order? So again, the question that we have today. No, he said the Hayom Yom, and in the Hayom Yom of today, there's a discussion about our Avodah vis-a-vis the Avodah of Avraham Avinu, that it was different. And it makes a statement that it was different and tells us how it was different. So the question, though, is similar to what we're having here. Obviously, it's different because Avraham Avinu was preparing for the giving of the Torah. We are after the giving of the Torah, but still, we should take a lesson from Avraham Avinu. So, and again, in the Hayom Yom, we do learn that it's actually a little bit different. But obviously, although it's different, but basically has the same concept. And as we'll learn here, that yes, it's different, but it's the same idea, the same concept. And that's why we learn about Lech Lecha today. And we have a lesson for us today, even though we exist thousands of years after the giving of the Torah.
It was the same thought, speech, and action, just in a different order.
Right.
It was like
so again,
thought, speech, and action days.
Right. So again, the point is why. So again, Mahi Imkain Hayra Libnei Yisrael Shalach Matan Torah Ilach Lecha Me'artzecha. What's the lesson for Yidden after Matan Torah from the pasuk telling us Lech Lecha Me'artzecha that Avraham has to pick himself up and leave? Shahaya Iruah Chat Pa'ami, which happened once. Asher Hiva Hachana Belvad Matan Torah, which at that point this created a preparation for Matan Torah for Avraham Avinu. And we say that preparation that Avraham Avinu had on a one-shot deal for Matan Torah, before Matan Torah, this is a lesson for us today also. We already had Matan Torah. We don't have to prepare for Matan Torah. We already have the Torah. So we don't have to get prepared for the giving of the Torah. So what's the lesson for us today from something that seemed to be told to Avraham Avinu in preparation for Matan Torah? It's a lesson for us even today, although we have the Torah for thousands of years already. L'chayra, Maida Hava Hava. It would seem like Maida Hava Hava. What happened back then when Avraham was getting ready for Matan Torah happened then. We're not getting ready for Matan Torah today, so that shouldn't be effective to us. We're not just telling a story. You want to know how Avraham Avinu prepared himself for Matan Torah? Let me tell you. Hashem says to him, Lech Lecha Me'artzecha min Beladtecha. But if it's just the story, there are many stories about Avraham Avinu. Like we said, the Cheshvan and other stories. And Torah doesn't tell us those stories. What? Okay, the Sicha, well, the Torah tells us about the Akedah. But there are many stories that the Medrash brings about Avraham Avinu, the way he had to fight with his father. He didn't get along with his father, with Avodah Zarah, with, so many stories that are told. And still, Torah does tell us about Lech Lecha, when in fact, this is something that you would think to yourself, what's the relevance for us today? We already got the Torah. We don't have to think about how to get the Torah. We have to think about how to, once we have the Torah, what to continue to do with it. It is so that we know Shavedas Avraham Avinu the Lech Lecha hi achana and is hinizkerach lavedas shalachar matan Torah. So if it's just to tell us what happened, that's not what it's all about for us, because we already received the Torah. So we don't need to know what Avraham Avinu needed to do to prepare the Torah, to receive the Torah. So again, what's the message when we read Parshas Lech Lecha today? So what is it that we should say? Okay, now that we read these stories, this is what we have to do. Yes, okay, even more so than Rabbi says, every year when we read the Torah, we read the story last year and the year before, the famous story about this woman who, every time they would read the story about the selling of Yosef by his brothers, she would cry terribly, cry, and everybody in the shul heard her crying, and she would say, "What?" They would ask, "Why are you crying?" Because I feel so terrible for Yosef. His brothers pick him up and sell him as a slave. Terrible. One year, Torah was read, and she didn't cry anymore. So they asked her, "What happened? How come you're not crying again?" She said, "You know what? one year after another, the same thing happens, and Yosef still goes to his brothers. It's his own fault now. So the point is, when we read Torah, we have to read it like it's something new is occurring, and the relevance has to be applicable. And so the question is, we're reading about Avraham Avinu being told by Hashem, Lech Lecha. What's the relevance for us today? What does it mean to us after we have already received the Torah? Not only have we received the Torah, we've already gone to Eretz Yisrael. Avraham Avinu went to Eretz Yisrael. Eden already received Eretz Yisrael. What's the relevance today when we read it?
I mean, so that really is a question about everything, because you can say that Rabbi said so many times that Torah is an eternal lesson. It's applicable at all times in all places, which with every part of the Torah.
Correct.
So not just Abraham Avinu, but anything that happened before.
That is true. But especially, and that question exists every time, and the Rabbi asks that question every week and takes the lesson. But particularly, as the Rebbe says, this is such an important piece of it because it's the beginning of the Jewish people, and as the Rebbe starts, it's the klolus avodah of Bnei Yisrael. We're talking about what the avodah of a Yid is, not just a detail of it. What's the relevance for us?
He always implied by saying it's because Avram was before Mount Torah, after Mount Torah. It almost implies what's the relevance since we're already after Mount Torah. It's not like going against his own.
No.
It's always relevant.
You're missing a point, and the point is, generally we say the whole idea of Lech Lecha is so that Avram, in order for him to prepare himself for Matan Torah, he needed to go. So that being the message in this week's parsha, so we're asking, we don't need to have a message about getting ready for Matan Torah because we got the Torah.
So we think.
What's that?
So we think.
Well, didn't we? We all stood at Matan Torah.
Mashiach, we are at levels. We're still waiting for something.
Okay,
I feel like we haven't got out of Gaulish yet.
Oh, okay. So let's wait to see. You're.
Nevertheless,
the Rabbi wasn't thinking about somebody who doesn't know these things. But let's understand that concept, what it really means. What you're saying is correct, but let's understand that. What does this mean? Yeah. Somebody who learns a lot knows what we're going to get to. But let's see how the Rebbe puts it into the kinds of words that make it really relevant today, more so than ever before. בכל שנה מדקיר יש לך כל יום יהיה בנחל חדשים הלך כמה וכמה שכחו בזמן המיוחד בשנה שווה קודם לספר שכולו בתורה ברבים. We always have to look at it as something new, particularly when we actually read about this story in the parsha. We make a bracha on the Torah when we read it before and after. Since these things we relive with it as if it was happening for the first time. So the question becomes, what is it? What happened all of a sudden that we didn't know, that we know now, that we didn't know last year or the year before or the year before? What's going on? We're reading the parsha. It's almost like we say, good morning. We know this stuff already. What's the new excitement, the new message, the new, what's that? What's the chidush? What's new about this? We know that. It's an old story. So from this we can derive that every single year when we reach the Shabbos that we're going to read this coming Shabbos, Parshas Lech Lecha, this concept of Lech Lecha is reawakened. We should get re-excited about it. As if we are actually preparing ourselves for the giving of the Torah. And even more so than what happened last year and the year before. So how does that work? What's the meaning of this?
That's the concept of even though everything's eternal, which seemingly goes beyond Zman, nevertheless, there's still a concept of living with the sight.
Right.
Is the present.
So obviously that's easier said than done. So the question is, how do we actually do that? How do we actually take what we just said and apply it? What do we say today that's different than what we said last year and the year before and the year before? So what we need to understand is, yes, we're learning about Lech, that Avram was preparing himself for the giving of the Torah. And we're saying there's a lesson for us as well in terms of preparing ourselves for Torah. But what is there that we can do new in terms of preparation for the giving of the Torah? We've done this already for thousands of years. What's new about it? Aren't we already well prepared for the giving of the Torah? Avram Avinu did it. And after that, Moshe Rabbeinu did it. And all the Yidden from then and on. So what do we, in Tafshin Pei Daled, all over again, get ready for Matan Torah? What does this mean?
Right, so it's almost saying, that which is Mada Habi, it's already been done. So it's irrelevant. We already knocked that one off of our list. What's next?
What's next? So obviously there's something unique. And what is that?
Like we don't go into depth of how Abraham prepared for God's command. Those 75 years are like medrash and everything.
Right.
So why isn't all these stories like basically summarized like other parts of Chumash and then it's mostly medrash?
So why is this story something that the Chumash tells us about, and there's a lesson for us? What's the lesson? What's so powerful about this concept that we have to mention it and take a lesson from it? And we have Parshas Lech Lecha. Okay, sit down around the table and we ask our children, so what did you learn in school that the lesson from Lech Lecha is all about? All right, remember, for this coming Shabbos, keep in mind what's going to be your Dvar Torah at the Shabbos table. Your tati's going to ask, okay, what did you learn today? What's the lesson? And you're going to make a presentation out of the box.
I'm afraid you're going to say Lech Lecha and all the kids leave.
So what is it? What is this lesson, a message for us today? Standing today after Matan Torah. We've received Torah. So now what? What more do we need to do in terms of receiving the Torah? We say to Mizais, even more so, the Rebbe says, the concept of Matan Torah, we do every single day because we say, Hashem gives us the Torah. So every day we're celebrating and experiencing Hashem giving us the Torah. So what happens?
The question right now.
One second. And obviously, we're celebrating, we're experiencing the giving of the Torah each day, and today more so than yesterday more so than the day before. So now, today, we've for thousands of years already continued to celebrate Matan Torah over and over and over again, and each time with something new about it. So Aliyas Achar Aliyas b'meshach ribi achi gadol shel yamim shana b'deiris ma'ifli yonah shalach lecha kachanu l'matan Torah. So come on, what's the limit? Each year another, and even more, and even more, and even more. What's going on, and how much more can we do this? What are we trying to reach? What are we trying to accomplish now, today, that we didn't do yesterday? Yes.
The simplest Torah about the giving of the Torah. Also, or is that more Shavuos?
It's more Shavuos. Simchas Torah was the concept of after the Jews sinned and they broke it was the second luchos. But after the Yidden sinned and Hashem says Salachti Kidvarecha, so now they get the second luchos. So that's what Simchas Torah is really a celebration of, that the concept of Bali Tshuva versus Tzaddikim.
Shavuos part 2, sequel.
Well, it's sort of Shavuos part 2, right? What's that? What? Well, so that is part of this whole question. The question is a good question, but it's all part of the same idea. You got it? We can't say so you might say, I'll tell you what it's all about. You know, we work every day, and every day has to be a new receiving of the Torah. So suppose though yesterday we didn't do enough. So we have a chance today to do a little bit more. So the idea of Matan Torah every day is for somebody that didn't quite do what he needed to do yesterday. So we get another chance today to do it. So maybe that's what it's all about. So Mishum Shegiluim Upulasum Shalaseres Hadibus Matan Torah Bamirishena, well, that's a moving before Shana Vashana, the Hayatuis Budagas of Idashis Israel. In other words, what we're going to be saying is based on this, that for those that didn't accomplish, so we have another opportunity. And for somebody who didn't accomplish again, there's another opportunity. But what about the guy that did accomplish? For him, it's not relevant anymore. We have to find something that could be relevant for everybody. Of course, for somebody that didn't do it, okay, here's a chance. But what about the guy that did do it?
I miss some. It's always given every day. Why is it given every day? And there's an assumption it's only given every day for people who miss something, not for people who did. Why is that an assumption?
Well, perhaps we're saying, the Rebbe is saying, you might say that maybe this means it's given every day because if you didn't get it yesterday, so you have a chance today to get it.
Oh.
The Rebbe said that can't be. And what about for the guy that did get it yesterday?
Well, it says it's given every day to everybody. It doesn't make it
So that's the point that Rebbe says. You can't say that it's only for somebody who didn't get it. Everybody says it, exactly. So let's go to Gimel. So the Rebbe says, so let's get to the point of the explanation. So there's a whole arichas, and the Rebbe brings a lot of Mara Mekayimos, a lot of places that the Rebbe discusses this in great length. But the Rebbe said the point of it is, and I'll tell you what the point of it is. The Kudus Habir Vazah, the point of it is, Shehi Hani Senes. That this is really what it's all about. All that we spoke about earlier is really the point that we're making. Since, as we said, that Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, happens every single day. We said we make a bracha noisen Torah as if Torah is given today, not that it was given yesterday. Noisen Torah that is giving it to us today. Lashon Haiva that it's presently being given.
It's interesting. It says day and year. Giving every day. So
every day and every, so there's something new every day, there's something new every year. So right.
So everything is
again, the Rebbe says this is the point, but the Rebbe sneaks in a little word that tells us that there's so much more to this. To the point that this is Chadoshim Mamish, that it's not just a little bit more, a deeper explanation, but it's Chadoshim Mamish, like we never had this. So what could that possibly mean? What do you mean we never had it? We had it yesterday, we had it the day before, we had it last year, 2 years ago, thousands of years ago, and today it's something new. What does that mean? And what we're saying is that this Lech Lecha means that we have to be going to receive the Torah in an unbelievable fashion that leads us somewhere that we weren't there yesterday. In other words, yesterday we received the Torah, that was good for yesterday. But we have to today receive it in a whole different way.
Does that go against tradition? Yeah, tradition we don't
to
have
an extent.
change.
To an extent, so that's what we're trying to understand. So what is it? You're right. You know, It's not the same thing over and over. There's got to be something new, chadoshim, something new.
If you come up with something new, you're a happy course.
So that's a good question. So that is exactly what we're trying to understand. So what is it here? What are we talking about? That on the one hand, it's got to be, like you would say, tradition. It's got to be in line with what we already received. But at the same time that we say it has to be in line what we already received, it's got to be something new. How does that fit? It seems to be like a contradiction. So that's what we're saying. Since it is a good question, and since we seemingly got it yesterday, and we're trying to reach a higher level in it, what does that mean? So the Rebbe says, so for starters, let me tell you, that's why the parsha starts Lech Lecha. In order to reach a whole different level than you had yesterday, you have to do something that's Lech Lecha. You have to leave where you were yesterday. What that exactly means, we're going to learn. But it's parsha begins with, you want to know what you got to do. Number one, Lech Lecha.
So it's not a new Torah, it's a new cursive.
But let's learn. Let's learn.
Well, as I was saying, if you're going to
Hold on. Be patient. Huh? I know, but yeah, good. That's very good. But speculate and it's all great. But in order to see what the Rebbe says, we have to have patience because we can get caught up with that. And okay, finished. But now the way the Rebbe teaches is in that way to lead us to speculate. He asks us these questions so we can say, oh, maybe this is the answer. But let's see what the Rebbe says about that. That's why you have to hang in, because often the questions or the notes that you have is something that the Rebbe gets to immediately and says, yeah, that's a good point. And let's see what the Rebbe has to say about that. The Rebbe will make this question that we just discussed even stronger. How so? Because Shalko, it says, we're told that at Matan Torah, I'll call Dibur v'Dibur Porcha Nishmasam. What happened when they heard from Hashem, Anoichi Hashem Lecha? Each word that they said, Porcha Nishmasam. What does that mean?
Souls flew out.
What?
Souls flew out.
The souls left their body. They died. Every word that Hashem said, they couldn't deal with this anymore. They sort of, when a soul dies, what does that mean? That he finished what he had to do in his physical body. He fulfilled what he had to accomplish in his physical body, and now his soul went back up above. So it seems to imply that Hashem says, Anoichi, the first word of Aseres HaDibros, and it's all over. Everybody did what they needed to do in this world.
First word, or the Melchizedek Melchizedek is considered a Dibur?
The first, I'll call Dibur, it means the Anoichi itself. So now the obvious question is, if that happens, what else do we have to do? If we already fulfilled everything that we need to, and that's why our neshamas left, what happens after that? What happens after our neshamas left?
Back.
It came back. Why did it come back? We finished. What did it have to come back? It finished, so why does it come back? So hold on.
Worst roller coaster ever.
What's that?
Worst roller coaster.
Roller coaster, yeah.
Because we have the ability to do more than our mission.
Very good. Beautiful.
And go to the opportunities past our mission.
So if you want to take what you just said, think a little deeper and bring it ahead, can you think of how we can possibly answer the questions that we asked at the beginning? We asked the question, Avram already prepared himself for the giving of the Torah. And we received the Torah. So what now? So what could be the answer?
Because he has to leave and because he has the ability to do more things than his mission. Like if someone opens a book of Gemara and learns and inspires other people to do that, even though his mission's done, then Hashem might want him to do that.
So the answer is very, very good. See, when you think, you come up with the concept, but we'll see what the Rebbe explains in great detail what exactly that means. But the concept you got, that yes, this is what it's all about. Yes, Avraham Avinu did it. He prepared himself, and now we're after Matan Torah. But Hashem is saying to us, you know what? Every day there's more you can do. So the question will only become, well, we'll need to understand what more is there to do if we already got it. So you got it, and you got it completely. So what more? It's not as if we said, okay, we got a little bit of it, and now we got to get the rest. We got it all. What more? So we said, there's more. There is more. So the Rebbe is going to explain to us what the more is. But the idea, beautiful. You got it. So that's the way you have to follow along. And the Rebbe teaches us how we have to think and how sort of we challenge ourselves. We ask a question, we give an answer, then we have another question, another answer. And after you ask all these questions and you come up with some answers, you finally reach the conclusion of, now I get it. Now I understand what this parsha is all about and what we have to challenge ourselves with today when we learn Parshas Lech Lecha. So what is it? Let's get a little further. So we talk about that each time when they said, when Hashem told them something, then the Shamas left. And after that, after they died, Hashem brought down the tal, the dew with which he is going to accomplish when Mashiach comes, Tchias HaMesim. And he somehow brought these people that were at Matan Torah, that the neshamas left their bodies, he gave them back the neshamas. So each time Hashem said something, the neshamas left, finished, you're over with, and then, now you start all over again. I finished. What do I have to start all over again? So what does this mean? When the neshamas left their body, the first time there was the dibur, when Hashem says, when the neshamas left, because apparently they finished what they needed to accomplish in this world. What actually happened is, you know what? You finished what you needed to do, but now I'm going to give you more to do. You finished that. Now there's more you can do.
It's a real finish.
That's exactly
what
it.
Saying, but not even before they're giving something new, that the reason that their neshamas left had to do with some level of completion of their avoda, as opposed to they just got blown off their socks.
Well, it's a chiddush, but at the same time, that's really what it's all about. That's the whole concept of when a person passes away, because his neshama completed his avodah in this world.
Right. So we don't see that when there happens to be an event,
a tragic event,
like something like this happened, and then
say that we don't see it
somehow that these terrorists came about and ended people.
Well, because that's the way we look at it, that because that's what the terrorists did. But at the same time, as Yidden, we look at it and say that it's all from Hashem, and we say that there's a meaning behind it, and at the same time, we say we want to have toiv hanira v'nidla. We want to have revealed goods. So we said that, yeah, true, and that's why there's a letter from the Rebbe where the Rebbe writes to somebody specifically who lost a child when the child was young, etc. And the Rebbe says to him, but you need to realize that this neshama that came down into this child was a neshama, a very high neshama. Generally, neshamas have to redo their whole 70, 80 years that they lived on this world. It wasn't done properly, and it comes down again to fix that. This neshama did everything it needed to. There was one little thing it had to do. It did it, and the neshama left the world. So the Rebbe was explaining this to the parents and saying, you have to be so happy to know that you had this very special neshama, that you are the parent, you parented. So again,
it could take away the fear of death from a person.
It could.
Because at that point you say, I don't have to worry about it because it's already predetermined. There's a destiny of how long my life is, unless the person feels that they can extend or shorten it.
Well, what happens is, in spite of what we just explained, what a Yid has the ability to do maybe is show Hashem that there's more that you can do. So when we work and we accomplish a whole lot, we say to Hashem, yeah, you sent us down for this, but I can show you I can do much more. And then, you know what? This guy he's right. He can do so much more. I need him longer.
God, not the.
Right.
They can't make a change.
And Hashem says, you're right. So each day we get up in the morning, we should say, what am I going to do today that Hashem is going to say, wow, I'm so happy I got him up this morning because look what he did today. I want to get him up tomorrow again for that reason. So yes, maybe it was predestined. Today's the end. But since he's doing so much, let me keep him around. It's a benefit for me. It's a win-win.
There's the belief that there's not a predestined, but it does say that every Nisham before it comes down was given exactly how many minutes and seconds it gets. So how do you?
And again, that's true. But at the same time, that's where Bechira comes into the picture. So although it was given, we have the ability to sometimes make a difference there. And that's how, it was given. And then you go to a tzaddik to give you a bracha. That's it. What's the bracha going to do?
He was king that the children got sick.
Yeah. So you see that there's possibilities. What's the possibilities? Wait a second. He's showing me that there's more he can do. Go for it.
So it could have been an absolute predetermined destiny.
But nevertheless, you show Hashem.
So
Eibishter, I'm ready for more.
In Mazel Yisrael,
That's a whole other, yeah.
Like to give everything from.
Oh, so we didn't get to that yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet. We're still in the middle of Lech Lecha. Where are we going? And we're going. In time, we're going. Okay. What is really the need? That after Matan Torah we have a continued service, that we have to have Lech Lecha in spite of the fact that we received the Torah. What does it mean? It's not just about that we have to receive Torah at a higher level and we have to prepare ourselves therefore in a different way. This concept, whatever that means, is something that we have to always be doing. Lech Lecha. So on the one hand, you can say it's Lech Lecha so that. There's another thing, Lech Lecha in itself is Avodah. And what is that Avodah of Lech Lecha? What's that really all about?
Like there's a Matan Torah that's Tamidis, there has to be a Lech
Lecha Tamidis, correct. So we'll understand this. Let's understand what this whole idea was all about. Avraham Avinu left and he entered Eretz Yisrael. And what was this promise that Hashem makes to Avraham Avinu and to his children? That I will give you Eretz Yisrael. Since this whole concept of Hashem promising Avraham Avinu that I'm going to give you Eretz Yisrael, I'm going to give it to you and to your children. Each year we hear the same thing over and over. So what's the meaning of that? What happens every year?
The same promise.
The same promise and the same idea. Avraham Avinu getting ready for it. So what does this mean? So what happened? Hashem last year gave us already Eretz Yisrael, gave it to Avraham Avinu, gave it to his children. So good morning. What are we doing all over again this year? We have it. But I gave it to you already. I've already given it to you. But it's ours. We have it already as an inheritance. And it's a halacha that says that Torah tells us that we own Eretz Yisrael because Hashem gave it to us. That by Abraham going through Eretz Yisrael, that is what he did. He was acquiring it forever. So what do we got to do again today?
Hashem already knows if we could do extra than our mission, more than our mission. So we can't really get more time of our life because Hashem knows when we're gonna died. Because if Hashem knows we could do more than our mission, then he'll keep us in the world, and when we're not doing more than our mission, could just and we finish our mission, but he could just take us out of the world.
Right. But that's a good point. But the reality is that although Hashem knows, but he also knows that we may decide to do even more. Hashem knows not just what we can do on our own, but he also knows that, yes, this is what we thought we can do, and today we were inspired to do even more. So up until today, we didn't have that inspiration. Tomorrow, we had a greater inspiration to do even more. Get it? So it's like saying, if a person sins, how could a person sin? Hashem, if yesterday I didn't want to sin, and Hashem knew that I wasn't going to sin, how could I all of a sudden sin today? And the answer is, Hashem knows that yesterday I wasn't going to sin, but today I chose to sin. Hashem knows that. Hashem knows what you're going to choose to do in the end. So it doesn't get into the way of what Hashem knows.
If Hashem knows what we're going to do, we don't really have free will.
Well, so the answer is, like, if you go to, ever heard about a fortune teller? There's fortune tellers in the world. They know what's going to be if you're going to win the lottery. Or they know if you're going to, tomorrow you're going to decide to travel to Israel. So just because they tell you that they know that, does that mean that you don't have any choice now?
No.
Why not?
Because you could still choose the opposite.
Well, but even so, but he's telling you.
Hashem knows.
So Hashem knows what we're going to choose. That's what the point is. It's not Hashem knows and therefore we have to do it. Hashem knows what it is that we're going to choose. Get it?
So Hashem exists after the events. See, Hashem is, was, and will be. Yeah. So Hashem exists after you already did it, even now. So he sees what you already did now.
As you learn more, you'll get it more. But the concept is, it's, Hashem knows what we're going to choose. We have free choice. Hashem says, you have free choice. Yeah, but you know what? I know what your free choice is going to be.
Hashem saw you do it.
Oh, that makes more sense. So Hashem knows what our free choice is
going to be. That's it.
I was right there watching you.
Yeah.
In the future.
That's it.
That's why I know, because he saw you do it.
Elef Shana Be'inach,
That's why I know you did it, not
that's it.
he knows you did it. It's a different trouble with it.
Let's finish up over it.
I said everything out there already.
That's a long season. I want to get to a place where we can.
You're up some.
What the Rebbe basically tells us here, and I'll tell it to you about that, I'll tell it to you by heart. What the Rebbe basically is saying to us is the following: that on the one hand, Hashem gave Avraham Avinu back then, as we just learned, when Avraham Avinu went to Eretz Yisrael, when Moshiach comes, there's going to be a difference. What's the difference? We learn, Chazal tell us that initially we had the Shiva Umais, the 7 nations of the world. When Moshiach comes, we're going to get 3 more. Keni, Nizi, Nikadnoimi. There's going to be 3. See, that's what they say.
The land?
We got the land of the 7 nations, and when Moshiach comes, we're going to get the land of the 10, 3 more. And that's why it says we're going to have more Adi Miklat, and there's going to be other things that are going to happen. So what the Rebbe is basically telling us, the lands of the 7 nations, that represents the 7 emotions that we have. When we have the lands of the 7 nations, means that throughout Golus, we take our full emotions, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, Malvus, and we transform it from the impurity of the world to purity. which means we get excited about Torah and mitzvahs. We have a love for Hashem. We have a fear for Hashem. We have a connection with Hashem in every possible way because Hashem gave it to us. With the coming of Mashiach, we're going to get more than just that. We're going to have the intellectual ability to even understand Hashem. It says, Rambam says, when Mashiach comes, what's going to be? Every person is going to be involved in understanding godliness, something that we don't have any idea of, or we have very little idea today about. What's that?
We have Baruch Hashem.
We have, so Chassidus gives us a taste of that, somewhat of an understanding of Yediyas Alikus, of an understanding of godliness. So what the Rebbe says, we know we're told, Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitzi. It says there'll be a new Torah. Now, a new Torah, there's nothing new in Torah. Torah is the same Torah. It's not going to be Matan Torah again. But what does it mean, Torah Chadasha Me'iti Teitzi? We'll have a whole deeper understanding of the mitzvahs of the Torah. So when we learn Chassidus today and we learn about what a mitzvah does, what a mitzvah accomplishes, today we know you have to put on film. But Chassidus tells us when you put on film, what's the idea of putting on film? Dedicating, devoting our minds and our hearts to Hashem. That's what the mitzvah is all about. So we have a greater appreciation when we put on this film. We're not just doing a little action of some sort, but we have an understanding. This actually dedicates our intellect. That's why the Shalrosh is opposite our mind. The Shalyad is opposite our heart because we're dedicating our emotions. And that's what this mitzvah is all about, that we devote ourselves, we dedicate ourselves entirely to Hashem and what we accomplish through it. And Chassidus, again, discusses it in great length. And as in great length, as Chassidus discusses it, when Mashiach comes, Mashiach is going to teach us so much more about it. So we have an even greater understanding about what all the mitzvahs are really all about. And every single mitzvah. Today, there's mitzvahs that we have no idea what they're all about. Chukim are mitzvahs that we're just told to do it. Sorry, we're not given any reason for it. Again, there are reasons for it, and there's accomplishments that it does. And when Mashiach comes, we'll understand all of that. So what the Rebbe tells us here is, as we prepare ourselves in Golus for the coming of Mashiach, yes, Avram Avinu, with his Lech Lecha, each day he accomplished more and more and more. He prepared himself for the Matan Torah that we should be able to do mitzvahs. Up until then, there were no mitzvahs. And that's what Avraham Avinu prepared us and his children for. But throughout Golus, each day we get more prepared for what? For an understanding of the Torah as Mashiach is going to teach us. For the Torah Chadasha. And how do we get that deeper understanding? By learning more. So the more we learn, so the Lech Lecha, the Rebbe explains is really that you have to rise in a level of your understanding of Torah. You learned today, learn a little bit more. You learned an hour Chassidus today, learn an hour and 5 minutes tomorrow. You learned once a week, learn twice a week. And the more we dedicate ourselves intellectually to that, in other words, devoting not just our emotions, yes, we love Hashem and we fear Hashem and we do what we have to. Let's also concentrate on and dedicate our minds. And sometimes people say, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I don't want to get involved in what's that? I don't want to, break my head on something. Or this is a deep concept of Chassidus that I don't really get it. Let that be for somebody else. So the Rebbe is telling us in today's day and age, as we're just about ready for Mashiach, each one of us has to say to ourselves, you know what? Let me give it an extra try. Lech Lecha. Let's leave where we were yesterday. And yesterday we said, this is not for me. It's too deep for me. Let me try a little bit more so that I can be prepared for the Eretz Yisrael that we not only got through Avraham Avinu, but we're going to get through the coming of Mashiach, which means we will have all the nations of the world, not just those that represent the emotions of negativity, but even the intellectual capabilities that up until then, we know even up until the Baal Shem Tov came about, then up until the Arizal came about, there were so many philosophers in the Goyish world that came up with things that didn't even deal with. But as we got closer and closer to Mashiach, more and more was explored, and the Rebbe explains it in many Sichas how even the development of the world today is what encouraged and enabled, or the Rebbe taught us to take everything in this world, whatever it happens to be, whether it's the Rebbe spoke about it when radio, with television, with and with WhatsApps, with everything, utilize it for Torah and mitzvahs. I remember when the first time there was a hookup with Eretz Yisrael, the whole world was going crazy that the Rebbe's sichos are going to be on television. What are you, crazy? On television, that's terrible. And the Rebbe said, that's great. We're utilizing these developments to serve Hashem. And the more we show that the world, the entire world, everything of it was created for what? For one purpose, to have a better understanding of godliness and to better serve Hashem. And that's what we say, Lech Lecha. When we learn Parshas Lech Lecha today, it means as far as you've gone yesterday, today you have to take another step forward and add in your learning, add in your commitment, add in your understanding of Hashem. And that will prepare us for the ultimate, which means the ultimate when Hashem will give us the full Eretz Yisrael. So particularly now when we stand at a point where look what's going on in Eretz Yisrael, it's about every nation in the world being ultimately committed and dedicated and devoted to what Yidden want. And in spite of what we see out there, the negativity, it's not our job to figure out for the Eibishter how he's going to deal with it. But the Eibishter will certainly, as he has in the past, done the miracles for Klal Yisrael, will certainly perform miracles for us, and we will see it b'toiv hanira v'hanigla in a very revealed way, so that we won't have to just believe in it. We'll understand it and we'll see it with our physical eyes.
Right. Okay, so the question is, so there's clearly a person on